One couple left the country. Another left the relationship, both before the cameras stopped rolling. And neither one told production first. That's how far off the rails things went. This isn't a love story highlight reel. This is fallout. Quiet exits, loud betrayals, and timelines that cracked long before the wedding hashtags were written. The glossy previews didn't show you what happened behind the scenes when phones got turned off, locations went silent, and the pressure of pretending gave out. Whatever you thought 90 Day Fiancé the other way was about this season, babies, bridal dresses, big life transitions, burn it. We're not here to celebrate anything. We're here to report what's left behind when the fantasy wears off. And for at least two couples, all that's left is emotional residue, deleted posts, and the kind of silence that only shows up after something real has died. This is Sabrina, and you're watching TLC Drama Live, the only place where we say the quiet part out loud. Subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to drop your theories in the comments because some of you clocked this disaster weeks before TLC even hinted at it. Let's get into what actually happened. Not the teaser footage. Not the influencer edits. The unraveling starts earlier than anyone guessed. And by the time it showed up on screen, the damage was already irreversible. So what's the real story behind the season TLC sold as a journey of commitment, sacrifice, and transformation? Here's the problem. When love becomes a shared experience on screen, it doesn't stay equal. One person always bends more. One person always edits more. One person always loses control first. And when the camera keeps rolling after the trust is gone, what you're left with is a performance. That's what makes this season different. The masks weren't removed at the end. They fell off mid-season. Some ripped off by betrayal. Some crumbling from stress. Some quietly dropped with a caption that didn't need to explain anything. The fantasy was always going to break. No couple survives this level of scrutiny without cost. But what we saw wasn't two people failing to make it work. We saw two people watching the show they're in while living it in real time. And the distance between those two realities is what wrecked everything. This isn't just reality TV anymore. This is emotional surveillance disguised as love. This is couples weaponizing silence, captions, and DMs. This is the point where protecting your peace means disappearing before production can script your exit. And if you're thinking this is the worst it gets, you're wrong. Because one of these couples didn't just implode. They set off a chain reaction that pulled in family, broke trust across continents, and made viewers ask one brutal question. Did they ever love each other at all? Or were they just surviving the spotlight together until it got too real? Khloe and Johnny did not explode in a dramatic fight first. They faded in a way that feels worse. Because it happens quietly, in the moments when trust starts slipping and nobody says it out loud, in the small shifts that turn love into a checklist of proof, and the second someone feels the need to track another adult's location, something fundamental has already broken. This was not about jealousy in a dramatic sense. This was about fear taking the driver's seat, and fear never asks politely. It asks for passwords. It asks for updates. It asks for access. It turns affection into supervision. When Johnny asked Khloe to stop sharing his location, the request alone showed the relationship had crossed into dangerous territory. Because people who feel safe do not need to be hidden from, and people who feel secure do not need to hide others. From that moment forward, nothing between them was neutral anymore. Every move had meaning. Every delay became suspicious. Every quiet moment felt like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Khloe agreed to stop sharing his location, but agreeing did not mean believing. And that difference is where things cracked open. She did not feel safe, and instead of saying it out loud, she tried to make safety through control. She went to his workplace and watched his entire shift. Not because she wanted drama, not because she wanted a scene, but because anxiety needed physical confirmation. That is not romance. That is a person trying to calm a nervous system that no longer trusts words. When you reach that point, love has already been replaced by monitoring, and monitoring always grows. It never shrinks. It starts with checking, then it becomes waiting. Then it becomes proving. And once proving enters a relationship, the emotional balance is already gone. The phone discovery did not break them. The reaction to it did. When Khloe found messages on Johnny's old phone, the moment shifted from fear into clarity. This was not a misunderstanding. This was evidence. And instead of addressing what was found, Johnny pivoted to how it was found. He framed the issue as privacy. He framed Khloe as the problem. That move matters more than any message on that phone. Because accountability does not hide behind boundaries. Privacy is not a shield when trust has already been damaged. His response was not about repair. It was about deflection. It told Khloe everything she needed to know about how much emotional responsibility he was willing to carry. The moment someone defends access instead of addressing harm, the relationship stops being about love and starts being about power. And power never rebuilds trust. It only rearranges who feels smaller. Khloe leaving for a hotel was not dramatic. It was practical. It was a nervous system choosing space over chaos. It was a woman realizing that staying meant shrinking herself to keep the peace. Aruba stopped feeling like a dream. It started feeling like a trap built out of silence and uncertainty. When she said she was ready to return to the United States, it was not a tantrum. It was a boundary. And boundaries always sound loud to people who benefit from the absence of them. Johnny's response afterward stayed emotionally distant. Meme energy. Pirate persona. A tone that treated the situation like content instead of consequence. That is another kind of answer. Not cruel, but revealing. It showed how differently they experienced the same collapse. For Khloe, it was grief. For Johnny, it was visibility. When one person mourns and the other posts, you are no longer in the same relationship, even if you share the same show. Khloe's social posts started sounding like quiet closures, captions that did not explain, but did not need to. The kind of language people use when they are done justifying themselves. That shift matters. It means she stopped asking for permission to leave emotionally. She left mentally before she left physically. Aruba was not the problem. The problem was who she was becoming while trying to stay. And the hardest truth is this. Khloe did not walk away from Johnny. She walked away from a version of herself that was shrinking to survive. The silence after the bachelor party wasn't suspense. It was strategy. Luke disappeared just long enough to spark panic and reappear with the kind of smirk you only see when someone thinks they've already flipped the narrative. And when he finally did explain himself, the story came with a twist nobody was asking for. A stripper came over. That was the line. No remorse, no framing, just a casual drop of a bomb that he clearly expected Meline to swallow and smile through. She didn't. Her face went from disbelief to insult to fury without skipping a beat, and what followed wasn't a fight. It was a combustion. Food thrown, eyes wide, voice shaking. Meline didn't walk away. She stormed out like her dignity was still intact and she wasn't going to hand it over in exchange for a secondhand excuse. And Luke? He didn't apologize. He weaponized it. He took the backlash and turned it into engagement, reading hate comments, laughing through callouts, creating content out of conflict like the whole relationship was just a storyline to mine for clicks. That's not love under pressure. That's influence by design. It's not denial. It's monetization. And while he danced through the chaos, Meline got caught between two impossible roles. On screen, she's the pageant queen. Off screen, she's the fiancé who just got humiliated in front of the entire internet. And the tension between those two versions of her cracked loud enough to feel through every frame she's in. Because here's the real issue. This isn't a one-off. This isn't a bachelor party gone too far. This is a pattern of behavior that rewards itself. Luke doesn't change because the chaos works. It keeps him visible. It keeps him trending. It gives him control of the narrative. And when someone gets paid in attention, why would they ever choose peace? Meline, on the other hand, is still operating like there's something sacred about the relationship. She's reacting like betrayal matters. He's reacting like it's Tuesday content. That mismatch is what's destroying her on camera. Because every tear, every rage-filled comment, every storm out is real. And it's being recycled into entertainment while she's still trying to figure out whether she's even respected. If the audience rewards drama, if the network spotlights the breakdown, and if the person you love turns conflict into currency, then what exactly is the incentive to behave with care? Every time Meline questions him, Luke gives just enough to keep the story going, but never enough to restore trust. And when she breaks down in the car alone, whispering to herself, you're watching a woman realize that the relationship she's in might not be about love at all. It might be about performance. And that's the hardest kind of betrayal, because you don't just lose the person, you lose the meaning. You start questioning if any of it was ever real, or if you were just set dressing for a personal brand. The show plays it loud. The internet plays it louder. But the real damage is happening quietly, in those moments where Meline keeps showing up, while Luke keeps building a following. And if love gets flattened into story beats, if pain becomes punchlines, then someone like Meline has to decide what costs more, losing the man or losing herself trying to stay relevant next to him. And if the chaos keeps him paid, who's really in control? Because if drama turns into currency, why would anyone stop creating it? Some couples implode under scandal. Others erode under stress. For Mannon and Anthony, it wasn't betrayal or infidelity that cracked their marriage. It was the slow, grinding weight of trying to survive. No dramatic walkouts, no viral fights, no thrown food. Just two people trapped in a situation where every choice feels like a calculation, and love starts to sound like a luxury they can't afford. They didn't move to France for adventure. They moved because the walls in Los Angeles were closing in. And the pressure of survival had turned their relationship into something transactional. The move wasn't about building something new. It was about running out of room to breathe. Sharing a bed with your toddler isn't quirky or cute. It's a snapshot of exhaustion. Financial stress doesn't come with warnings. It just moves in and sets the tone for everything. And when you're constantly counting hours, bills, meals, and moments of silence, you start to forget what intimacy ever felt like. Manon didn't pause her career because she wanted rest. She did it because survival demanded sacrifice. And when you grow up around money instability, like she did, choosing to slow down feels like choosing to fall behind. That kind of fear doesn't show up with screaming or meltdowns. It shows up when your body won't rest, when you check the bank account before checking in with each other, when you measure every decision against the risk of falling apart. What makes this story hit differently is that it isn't sensational. It's ordinary in the worst kind of way. There's no big reveal, just the claustrophobia of having nowhere to go and no room to be alone. And when that tension plays out on camera, the internet treats it like a game. Manon starts getting hit with the ugliest, laziest kind of judgment. What does he see in her? Why is she even there? The comments aren't critiques. They're attacks, not just on her choices, but on her worth. And for someone already carrying the fear of being too much or not enough, That kind of noise lands like a wrecking ball. But she doesn't shrink. She fires back. Tells him to ask him directly. Refuses to let strangers reduce her to a trope. It's not a PR moment. It's not polished. It's pure boundary and the first real shift in their story. Because later that day, Anthony steps forward. No big speech, no grandstanding, just a quiet public statement defending his wife. He doesn't paint their marriage as perfect. He doesn't pretend they're thriving. He says they're working through it. And that sentence lands harder than anything else because it's the one thing reality TV almost never shows. Partnership without performance. They're not trying to prove they're in love. They're trying to hold it together long enough to find peace. And that fight is messy, private, and invisible to people who measure love in highlight reels. Manon doesn't leave. Anthony doesn't retreat. They shift their energy inward. She starts promoting his Twitch channel. He stops explaining their relationship to people who've already decided what they think. It's not a comeback. It's a survival move. And that choice is more powerful than any perfect post. Because when you're drowning in judgment, one small gesture of support can feel louder than 1,000 attacks. Their life in France isn't aspirational. It's raw. It's crowded. It's stretched thin. But they're still standing in it together. No romance arc. No influencer glow. Just two people still showing up for each other. Even when the script doesn't ask them to. That's not weakness. That's resilience. But it's the kind of resilience that leaves scars. And the truth is, love doesn't feel romantic when you're watching rent climb and wondering if tonight's dinner fits the budget. Love stops being a dream when food and peace become the actual prize. Because love is not romance when rent and food feel uncertain. Jenny didn't lose herself all at once. It happened the way emotional suffocation usually does. Quietly, slowly, and with a smile still on her face. For viewers, the relationship with Sumit always looked like the victory arc. They fought the odds. They stood against family pressure. They got married. But no one asks what comes after the wedding when the pressure doesn't stop. And what came for Jenny was control disguised as tradition. Expectations that never adjusted for who she was or what she needed. A home that never fully felt like hers. A marriage that looked solid from the outside, but cost her more than anyone could see. The moment she said it out loud, it landed like a confession. I've lost a lot of independence. Not said with bitterness, but exhaustion. And that's what makes it hit harder. Because when someone loses freedom, in slow motion, they start lowering the volume on their needs, just to keep peace. And when you're the outsider in your own house, privacy becomes a fantasy. Jenny wasn't asking for anything extreme. She wanted space. She wanted autonomy. She wanted a life that didn't feel constantly supervised by the weight of Sumit's family watching, correcting, reshaping her existence into something more acceptable. Even her body started to feel like it wasn't hers. When a woman has to hide basic habits in her own home, like sipping wine or saying no to forced activities, she's not living in a relationship. She's living under a microscope. At one point, Sumit's mother tried pushing Jenny into yoga routines, not as a gesture of support, but as a silent message, adapt or stand out. That pressure doesn't look abusive, but it erodes from the inside. Autonomy isn't just about choices. It's emotional oxygen. And without it, even love turns into a form of quiet panic. And when the wider family joined in, it got crueler. One scene turned humiliating fast. An aunt straight up called Jenny old, harshly, deliberately, without disguise. That moment wasn't just age shaming. It was a coded attack on her entire presence. It was a reminder that, for many in Sumit's world, Jenny still doesn't belong, no matter how long she's been in India or how much she's compromised. And while Sumit tried to stand beside her, there's only so much protection you can offer when the war is happening in the tone of everyday life. Even their shared project, the family cafe, didn't feel like freedom. It became another pressure point. They struggled with basic operations, lack of water, lack of privacy. And every time the business hit a wall, the stress came back home. No boundary, no buffer. Just two people trying to stay afloat while already emotionally stretched thin. Jenny kept showing up. She kept smiling in Instagram posts. But none of that masked the truth. She was living in a space where nothing ever felt fully hers. Not the home, not the calf, not even the silence. So, what happens when love doesn't die, but your sense of freedom does? What does that relationship become when every choice starts to feel like an obligation, not a partnership? What do you protect, your peace or the person who keeps asking you to shrink for it? All four couples started with the same premise: love, distance, sacrifice. But by the midpoint of the season, everything splinters. One walked away. One detonated. One endured in silence. One tried to renegotiate the terms of survival. It's not a matter of who stayed or left. It's what staying or leaving cost them. Because the exit signs didn't show up in one dramatic scene. They showed up in behavior. And that's where the real story sits. Khloe didn't scream or throw things. She watched. She tracked. She checked. That's not possessive energy. That's fear. The kind that builds when promises stop feeling safe and you start searching for proof instead of comfort. Johnny didn't cheat loudly. He pulled away quietly, then called her out for violating his privacy. That wasn't an answer. It was a dodge. And when she finally left, it wasn't about rage. It was about exhaustion. That relationship didn't break. It evaporated. Meline didn't ask for chaos. She asked for honesty. What she got was silence, lies, and public ridicule dressed up as charm. And when Luke laughed off accountability, turned her pain into comments content, and played the pirate role on social media like the audience was in on the joke, she didn't just lose trust. She lost her grip on what was real. Her explosion wasn't a tantrum. It was a scream from someone who felt like they were being filmed drowning while everyone else watched for entertainment. Manon didn't fight to be heard. She tried to hold the family together with limited space, limited funds, and zero emotional buffer. Her response wasn't loud. It was survival, slow withdrawal, burnout. Performing strength until the pressure of being a wife, mother, and provider in a foreign country made her snap. Anthony stepping in didn't fix it, but it gave her room to breathe without explaining why she couldn't anymore. That's what support looks like when survival makes love feel like a second job. Jenny's approach was quieter still. She didn't storm out. She didn't collapse. She endured. She endured being watched. She endured being undermined. She endured people saying she didn't belong. And when she finally said she felt like she had no independence left, the confession landed soft, but cut deep. Because endurance doesn't mean strength. It means a slow trade off of self. And that price keeps climbing the longer you stay. So, which response is stronger? Walking out, exploding, enduring, or renegotiating? None of them are wrong. They're just different reactions to the same emotional environment. Surveillance breeds anxiety. Control breeds rebellion. Silence breeds collapse. Performance breeds burnout. What we're watching this season isn't about good choices or bad partners. It's about people reacting to pressure in real time with no off switch and no safety net. You can't fix that with an apology or a visa. Because the problem isn't love. Love is the reason they all tried. Love is what made them move, bend, stay, or break. Love is not the problem. The environment is. Social media isn't just the after show anymore. It's the trial, the testimony, the sentence, and every post, caption, comment, or deleted story becomes a piece of evidence in a court where nobody gets a fair hearing and everyone gets a reaction. For these couples, the show isn't even the main platform anymore. It's Instagram. It's TikTok. It's whatever space lets them frame their side before the next episode airs. But not everyone plays the game the same way. Some use it as a weapon. Others take the hit and vanish. Either way, the relationship doesn't end at the tell-all. It keeps mutating in real time. Khloe's captions started soft, but got colder as the weeks passed. Until next time, night and day. Not full confessions, but not empty either. These weren't quotes for likes. They were exits disguised as reflections. And when she didn't clarify, fans filled in the blanks. That's the trap. When you go quiet, the audience gets louder. And sometimes the silence protects you. Other times, it buries you. Johnny's response wasn't silence. It was satire. Pirate jokes. Meme posts. He didn't counter the betrayal narrative. He leaned into it, not because he wasn't bothered, but because mockery buys you more time than vulnerability. If people are laughing, they're not looking deeper. If they're entertained, they stop questioning your intent. That's a tactic. And for some, it works, until it doesn't. Luke's strategy was clearer. He made hate comments a brand extension, screenshotting them, reading them aloud, posting his reactions like he was building a wall out of them. But every wall tells a story too. His wasn't confidence. It was insulation. The louder the audience yelled, the louder he got. And that loop became a performance no one could walk away from. For him, drama became the engine. Not something to fix, something to ride. Meline didn't vanish, but she didn't fight either. She toggled between pageant wins and tear-filled exits. Between trophies and trauma. She didn't need to say much. Her face during that fight said everything. The silence afterward wasn't avoidance. It was recovery. And recovery doesn't always look graceful. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's passive. Sometimes it's a woman not correcting the story because she's too tired to care who believes it. Manon's approach was direct. She clapped back, then stepped aside, drew a line, told the critics to ask her husband, then let Anthony speak. That kind of public alignment hits harder than any influencer couple posting a coordinated selfie. It wasn't about damage control. It was about unity. Not perfectly staged, but grounded. When the internet asks what he sees in her and he says everything, that's not PR. That's intimacy. And it reads. Because not every couple uses social media to win. Some use it to survive. Some use it to disappear. And some stop posting because explaining yourself becomes another unpaid job you never applied for. What we're seeing now isn't just storylines collapsing. It's emotional stamina playing out online. Who can take the heat? Who needs space? Who turns noise into fuel? And who lets the internet do the talking so they don't have to? Because silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's strategy. Sometimes it's strength. And sometimes silence is the only way left to reclaim something private in a life that's never fully yours again. Every couple says the same thing when the season starts. Love is all that matters. But by the middle, the math starts changing. Love doesn't pay for housing. Love doesn't speed up visas. Love doesn't get you approved by a skeptical mother-in-law or make a crumbling bank balance disappear. What we start seeing clearly is leverage. And not everyone holds it equally. Some use it. Some fight against it. Some surrender to it without even realizing they did. Khloe went all in. She moved countries, gave up control, let Johnny set the tone, the pace, the terms, and when he pulled back, physically, emotionally, logistically, there was nothing to fall back on. She didn't have her own support system in Aruba. No income, no legal status, no backup plan. When she found those messages, and he accused her of violating his privacy, it didn't just end trust. It made the power imbalance impossible to ignore. Because who gets to draw privacy boundaries when the other person gave up everything to be there? Meline's situation looks different, but it bleeds the same. She had the platform, the pageant wins, the curated image of someone who's winning. But behind the glamour, she was still chasing Luke's version of the truth. And when he finally admitted a stripper came over, it was framed like a joke. Like the problem was her overreaction, not his choices. He had the visibility. He had the fan engagement. He turned scandal into screen time. She had to keep performing like the fairy tale was still on track. Because if she left too soon, she'd lose the storyline. And in this show, losing the storyline means losing relevance. Manon didn't even get to pretend. She went to France not for love, but for last chances. Her power vanished the second she paused her business, slowed her income, and started trying to hold the family together on what little bandwidth she had left. Her leverage was gone the minute the bills showed up and there wasn't room to breathe. Anthony's public defense gave her some ground back, but even then, it was clear who was sacrificing more. She gave up independence. He gave up silence. That's not equal. That's survival with uneven footing. And Jenny. Jenny gave up location, country, comfort, and culture. And still ended up living under someone else's roof, navigating someone else's rules. Even when Sumit supports her, the structure doesn't shift. Her autonomy is always conditional. Based on peace. Based on family mood. Based on keeping things stable. She never holds the power to say no without it turning into a crisis. And when you can't say no freely, even the yes stops meaning anything. So when people say love wins, you have to ask, who's allowed to define the terms? Who's making the decisions? Who gets to walk away? And who has to stay, compromise, beg, or disappear to keep it going? Because if love needs permission, is it still love? Or is it negotiation with a softer name? By now, the smiles look different. They're tighter, heavier, performed. Each couple is still standing, or at least pretending to, but nothing about them is the same. Because the price of staying, leaving, or even trying has already been paid in full. And not in dramatic moments. In the quiet ones. The parts no one claps for. The parts that don't make the trailer. Khloe paid with her sense of safety. When she agreed to stop tracking Johnny, it wasn't trust. It was a forced surrender. But that silence didn't save the relationship. It buried it. And when the truth finally came out, the message on the phone was just confirmation. What she already knew deep down had been waiting there the whole time. What she lost wasn't Johnny. It was her ability to believe she'd made the right choice in giving everything up. The cost wasn't love. It was self-trust. And rebuilding that will take longer than any visa process ever could. Meline paid with her peace. The dream she kept chasing, wedding, stability, shared future, started to rot the second the bachelor party truth hit. But even worse than the lie was how fast it became content. Her pain turned into punchlines. Her heartbreak got folded into engagement metrics. And while Luke kept posting, performing, shrugging off the outrage like a badge, Meline was stuck trying to control the damage without losing the entire foundation. And when she whispered in the car, alone, wiping away her own tears, it wasn't just a breakup. It was the realization that the man she loved knew exactly what her limit was and stepped over it anyway. Manon paid with her identity. Survival mode stripped her of the roles she once felt powerful in. Business owner, partner, individual. It all blurred under the weight of exhaustion, financial pressure, parental burnout, internet scrutiny. Even when she clapped back, even when Anthony defended her, it didn't undo the internal erosion. She's not broken, but she's not the same. The version of her that moved to France was already carrying too much. And now she carries even more, without knowing what parts she'll get back. Jenny paid with freedom. She stayed. She compromised. She adjusted. She held on. But every year that passed under the watchful eye of Sumit's family chipped away at her sense of self. And when she said she wanted her independence back, it wasn't a tantrum. It was a truth she'd been holding too long. Even with the family cafe, even with the public love posts, even with the anniversary celebrations, she's not thriving. She's surviving. And when survival becomes the default, joy gets muted. That's what it cost her. Joy that felt like hers. They all paid something. Some with their privacy. Some with their safety. Some with their voice. Some with their reflection in the mirror. None of them got out untouched. No one wins when love has to survive this much exposure. But one couple still hasn't faced their full consequences. They've delayed it, distracted from it, posted through it. But the cost is coming. And when it hits, it won't be dramatic. It'll be permanent, because the real bill always comes when the cameras stop. And for them, it's already on the way. This season didn't start with love. It started with denial. Denial that pressure wouldn't get to them. Denial that cameras wouldn't change things. Denial that compromise wouldn't become sacrifice. But the truth was always sitting in plain sight. This wasn't a season about weddings, babies, or new beginnings. That was just the packaging. What actually played out was survival under exposure. Relationships stretched until they snapped. Intimacy broadcast until it broke. Trust measured in captions. Loyalty tested in silence. And every couple reached their own breaking point, even if they didn't say it on camera. Khloe and Johnny gave us the quietest collapse. No public fight. No dramatic declaration. But the kind of heartbreak you can feel in your chest. Because it started way before the messages were found. It started the moment she didn't feel safe and he didn't notice, or didn't care to. Her exit wasn't about rage. It was about reclaiming peace. You don't leave someone like Johnny because you hate them. You leave because staying feels like disappearing a little more every day. Moline and Luke detonated in real time. The dream of a wedding got drowned in the sound of chairs scraping, voices rising, and the kind of fight that doesn't get edited down to one scene. Meline wasn't reacting to a single betrayal. She was reacting to years of being minimized, mocked, and molded into the version of herself that made Luke look more stable. And when the food hit the table and her voice cracked, it wasn't a breakdown. It was a finale. Manon and Anthony endured. But they didn't endure equally. She lost more. She gave more. And she got less. The move to France wasn't about hope. It was about trying not to drown. And even with Anthony's support, even with the moment of public defense, the toll is still visible. Manon has changed. Slower. Quieter. A little less certain. That's not drama. That's burnout. And it doesn't go away with time. It just gets harder to name. Jenny and Sumit stayed, not because it was perfect, but because staying was the least disruptive option. Because leaving meant giving up not just a person, but a life they'd built together, flawed and frustrating as it is. Jenny hasn't given up, but she's not free. Her wins come in small doses, a parent moving out, a business functioning for one more day. Independence isn't back. But at least the noise is quieter now. Some people leave to live. Some people stay to breathe. And some people perform until they forget who they were before the story began. This isn't a fairy tale recap. It's a record of emotional erosion. A reminder that even the strongest love can bend too far when pressure is constant and relief never comes. Because when you let cameras capture everything, it's not just your actions that get judged. It's your silences, your pauses, your hesitation. And love, no matter how real, cannot compete with that level of exposure forever. But we're not done. One couple has been dancing around their own reckoning for months. They've kept up the posts, the appearances, the storylines. But something's off. Something's coming. And when it does, it won't be about screen time or story arcs. It'll be about consequences no one is prepared to face. We'll be there, and if you've seen the signs, you already know who it is.